everybody, welcome to the Open Network User Group podcast. I'm Mark Tierney, I'm ONUG CTO, and today I've got a great guest. He is famous. I'm just gonna say it. He's famous in the DevOps community, and we're gonna have fun talking to this person because I was talking to this person, and I said a couple things, and I saw his ears perk up, and I think he's gonna, I don't know, satisfy some of my curiosity about what's happening in the DevOps space right now. But first, ONUG Fall 2022, it will be a hybrid event again. It's going to be at Center 415 on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. That's New York City, kids, October 19th and 20th. That's October 19th and 20th, Center 415 on Fifth Avenue. Join the ONUG community of Global 2000 companies, enterprise architects, cloud providers, thought leaders, as we explore the building blocks required to create flexible, transformative IT business platforms. Go to onug.net to register for this event today. All right, who is our great guest? He is James Wickett. James is head of research at Verica. He's also an author. He's the author of DevOps and DevSecOps at LinkedIn Learning. I want to learn more about that. So James, first of all, hello. Thanks for being with me today. Why don't we start with, just a little bit of background, and then you can ease us into this whole universe you're in the DevOps space. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Hey, Mark, thanks for having me on. It's a lot of fun. Thanks for your, putting me on the show. I was worried. I thought it was ONUG, so I'm glad to hear it's ONUG. That's great. Thanks for clarifying that.
That's our founder, Nick Lippis, doesn't even say it right, so it's all good.
Okay. Well, good. So where should we start? I've been, for most of my career, I've been in operations or security, and I've worked kind of I'm pre-cloud days, right? Worked like as a web system admin for many years. Kind of carried the pager, did the battling of that. Done the compliance stuff. Have some security certifications and training in large enterprise as well, and then was fortunate enough to work with some friends, and we got on the cloud early on in 2010, and we started some projects for National Instruments, which is a company here in Austin, Texas. We were building some cloud products together. One of them being my good buddy Ernest Muller, who we ended up later kind of filming some of those courses you were talking about on LinkedIn Learning.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about it. It's not a commercial. I wasn't aware that you did all that, and so now it makes sense of why you're passionate about it. So tell us what you're doing on LinkedIn. It sounds like you're kind of a big deal.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I will say we started. We had DevOps days here in Austin, and Austin's was really kind of blessed in the early days of kind of the formation of DevOps, right? And so I can remember back to 2010, 2011. I would tell my friends I'm using the cloud, and then they're like, oh, there's this thing called DevOps, and it's like everything was like finger quoting, and people were like, just thought I'd lost my mind, right?
That's right.
And that's all right. And but we had some really great meetups in Austin, just at local bars with people like Gene Kim coming in, and I could just think of those like Adam Jacobs and other folks, and early chef and puppet people. Right. Meetups and working groups and breakfasts and stuff. And so just all that stuff was kind of going on in Austin at the time. And in 2012, we were like, all right, let's have a DevOps Days. And so we kind of held our first DevOps Days event, had a bunch of people join. That was really successful. I blogged with Ernest, although Ernest does the bulk of the writing for it on the Agile Admin. And he'd written a post called "What is DevOps?" And that went on for many years. I can't remember the year, it was maybe 2014 or so, but it was definitely the most read, most viewed piece of content on what is DevOps, or the definition of DevOps, and it was cited in a lot of places. And back then it was called Lynda, but lynda.com, they did the Photoshop classes and stuff, but they're trying to get IT library stuff. And they reached out to us, and they had seen some of our stuff and said, hey, would you like to teach, or would you like to film a course? And that's how we kind of got started. LinkedIn Learning eventually bought them, and then Microsoft bought LinkedIn, and so they've kind of grown the IT enterprise catalog over that course. But and that's where we started with the basics of it's a 3-hour primer videos on what is DevOps, how to what books you should consider reading, like, career paths. So we try to answer some objections, show some basic skills that people should get on as they're kind of approaching this, and like a framework, a way to think about it. And then that spun off several other sub courses. Like we have an infrastructure as code course. There's an agile course. There's some other pieces we put out there. And then the DevSecOps stuff kind of flowed out of that, as well as like a security is kind of coming on board. It was really, we just thought like, we knew that people needed to hear DevOps like from like kind of the pure vision of what DevOps was, which we argued about a lot during the early days, and by we, I mean like the DevOps community as a whole.
Community.
Like, there's a lot of like argument of like, should we even call it DevOps? Like, or like, or should we call it anything past like DevOps is just like a professional culture, Anyways, it was good. A lot of great discussions in those days, but there's a lot of excitement kind of as this was forming.
Isn't it true? Isn't it true, James, that the early meetings was you developer types getting together and just trying to marginalize old infrastructure people like myself? Isn't that really what was going on? I mean, just be honest about it, right?
That's exactly what it was. It actually, I found there's a lot of like there's a lot of neckbeards and Unix people, in the house who are very excited about the change as well. Especially folks that had kind of come up and had some sort of CF engine, implementation. And back then, like it was like Chef, Puppet, those were DevOps type of things. There was no CI/CD. That didn't really matter. But people were like, okay, like I want to codify my infrastructure. I want that piece to work, right? And then those other pieces, the continuous delivery stuff, Jez Humble's and Nicole's stuff has kind of helped. And Nicole Fosgren really helped bring it across from, and Gene Kim, I would say, really helped bring it from DevOps is for these, practitioners to like the business cared about it because they showed the business value of kind of taking part in the DevOps transformation that many people were coming at. But I don't know, to your question though, like to answer your question slightly seriously, Mark, like I think there was always a feeling of like, are we trying to replace like all the infrastructure and stuff that's gone before us? I mean, that's not completely untrue, but I like this quote by Tom Limoncelli, and and I'm going to butcher it because it's been a while since I've looked at it, but he says that the rise of DevOps was it was like a necessity. Like it wasn't a response to a cultural movement like we all like to think, and it wasn't like this hipster thing that we all like to believe we were part of. He sort of charts it back to, and he wrote the Cloud System Administration book, but he wrote that 10, 15 years ago, you could have one person and they can manage tens of servers, no problem. They could probably even manage 100 servers, right, with some level of automation. But now we're taking the cloud. We have the cloud, and now we're dealing with hundreds, thousands, maybe even 10,000 servers per person in that role. And so like the tooling and everything has to radically shift. And so you
just can't scale it the old way. It just can't, right?
And so I like that. I like that approach because I think there's all the siloization talk is true. I think the culture stuff's true, but I also think of like the technology change forced the way we like do business. I think that's also true. So, it's like anything. You could come up and describe why and how DevOps came to be, and there's some fun history like in all directions on that. But yeah.
No, it's so for most people who know me know that I describe myself as a first follower. I'm not particularly that innovator, new idea person, but I am, and I pride myself on being the type of person that looks or can look at new technology and new innovation, and from an operational mindset, go, this works. And, here are things that maybe we should be doing to make it successful, right? So even though there were a lot of infrastructure people, to your point, that were threatened by, the idea of DevOps, how do you get in the way of innovation? Like, how do you do that with a clear conscience, right? You want to be able to enable these things so we can all do more and do it better, right? And make it a wonderful experience for everyone. So I was lucky to work at a firm that was an early adopter, and even with with enormous infrastructure organizations, we knew what the right direction was to go, and there was room for everybody who's willing to change, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
so it all makes sense. Those early days were fun, as to your point, as everyone was trying to figure it out, right, and make it successful. So but here's the thing, and this is where you and I connected, and I felt like your ears perked up a little bit. I joke all the time whenever I'm on a call, and for those who are familiar with ONUG, the Open Network User Group, we have several different working groups that are tackling a lot of tough issues, and sometimes we'll talk about what's happening in the DevOps community, what's happening in the DevNetOps community, or Net DevOps community, or DevSecOps community, right? And every time I hear those, I just get a little twitch, James, because it always felt like that was not the original dream. And I'm not saying I'm right, but I always felt like the dream of DevOps was to have sort of that ubiquitous, single sourced, intelligent hybrid Borg-like creature that could do it all, right? To a certain degree, especially the organization I was in, we were big in the early days in OpenStack, for example. And why does it take three different disciplines to pull all that off when you just need to be an OpenStack person, for example? That's as an example, right? And so I laugh to think that
Kubernetes 1.0. So,
we couldn't wait to create specializations around the DevOps mindset. So first of all, am I wrong? Am I full of crap? Or is this, why did it land like this? And where is it going, do you think? That's a lot to ask.
No, you're right. Yeah. And I think that I live in Austin, close to, we used to do a lot of our meetups at the Rackspace headquarters, and they're a big proponent of OpenStack back in the day. So I've kind of feel like I saw the inside of that, at least from the outside, of what was going on with that, and we've seen that cycle, happen several times over since then, right? It's like, okay, Docker, now we're at Kubernetes, and so it is that's interesting point. And I would say you're both right and you're wrong at the same time. And it's like, it was definitely an early struggle that we had where we wanted it to just be DevOps, and people didn't want to define it, as I kind of mentioned. They were very much against like certifying somebody as DevOps. They were against the idea of writing a book about DevOps. I can think of some of these discussions around that, and there was just that's early days. We felt like we knew what we wanted to do as a community, and what we're trying to do, and how we're trying to think of infrastructure differently. Your question on naming, and like how like everybody's, I think DevOps sort of it was meant to encapsulate the siloization problem that you have between operations and development, right? So for every 10 developers, you had one operations person. And so we're like, that's not really a good ratio. That's not really, workable. If you write it, you support it, we need to reorganize in our teams. We need to think about it. But then you're like, oh yeah, but what about security? What about network? What about database? What about it's like you could, so then there's been thoughts of like, okay, dev star ops, and then there's all the stuff you just mentioned, DevSecOps, DevNetOps stuff, and people are, Patrick Dubois, who's the guy who kind of first coined the term DevOps and had the first DevOps days. He gave a talk, and I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. He just he was just saying like, we kind of come up with all these names, and it's okay. It's okay. Like people are just trying to take this new style of working, kind of like what you described, and they're trying to apply it to the area that they're working on, and it's going to be messy. Like we're going to call it stuff like DevSecOps. DevSecOps may not, run the course, for a while there, we didn't think DevOps as a term was gonna hang, which is also fine, right? And it was actually started at like an Agile conference where they're like, let's talk about Agile infrastructure, and then that's how the DevOps kind of grew out of that. I think as long as we're thinking in each of our siloed areas, or the areas that are kind of our specialization, how do we overlap and work with other people, and how do we kind of distribute our knowledge and be part of kind of that as part of the team, and seeing us as like a part of the whole of like the software and the services we're delivering. I think like that's a win, right? And I remember too, there's this is a good one for you, Mark. All right, so early on, all right, it was we came up with the word DevOps. People were starting to hire DevOps engineers. Now, nobody wanted to call them a DevOps engineer because they're just supposed to be like, you're a systems engineer. And people in the DevOps community thought like, well, a DevOps isn't a person. It's not a job title. Like there's like themes about this. And
it's a process, right?
So
it's a mindset.
Yeah. So, but I remember I accepted, I don't know, 2014, I accepted my first job as a DevOps engineer as in 2014. And I had the business card that said DevOps engineer. Why did I do that? Well, because like as a DevOps engineer, I was now getting paid a lot more money than I was as just a regular. Right. And I was like, well, I got kids to feed. And if you want to call me a DevOps engineer, I'm not going to stop you. Like, let's do it, And so sometimes at conferences I'd hand out my thing and be like, yeah, here's my, and it's like, people like, yeah, we got it. It's like,
but it's not just because
it was just trying to show like the new way.
Yeah, but it's not just about being cool either. The new way did involve a paradigm shift, a new way of thinking. It did require technical talent, but married with process innovation. I mean, that deserved what it got. Like, that's how I saw it. It was new, and it was breaking norms, which needed to be broken. So here's one for you. So would you say that DevOps sprung forth because of cloud? You could argue that DevOps should exist despite cloud, right? But would it have exploded without the rise of cloud services?
I don't know. I think that I've thought about this question in another way. Like, software is kind of a new discipline, right? If you think about it from the age of human history, like software is what, 50 years old, 60 years old, something. It's not super, and what in the 70s and 80s and really the 90s, there was a lot of borrowing from other disciplines to figure out how we do things. So we borrowed from civil engineering as kind of our main source of guidance there, right? And so then you have these waterfall charts, and you have the lovely Gantt stuff and just whatever, but you have these big projects that unfold. And so when you're in civil engineering, like you have to measure. My dad's an actually architect, so I'm gonna mess this up. So hope he doesn't listen to this, because he'll be like, you got it all wrong. But
all the better. I hope he does.
You do the elevation, you do the site survey, you line up all your workers, you get all your city approvals and permits, and you lay your fire code and just whatever, right? And then it's like, okay, now we're gonna pour $10 million worth of concrete, right? Okay, so but you've done a ton of work to get ready for concrete pouring day or whatever, right? And you can't unpour that. Like, once that's out, it's like, okay, the only thing you can do is like spend a lot more money, right? So it makes all those practices and stuff, they're not really wrong, like to do, but something as easy as like changing a few keystrokes, in a software application. Whereas like a physical thing, like a road, that's like the most difficult thing to undo. Whereas like we have the most free, easily changeable thing that's ever been created by humans, like just typing something, and now you have a completely new product. So maybe we shouldn't have borrowed all those practices from that discipline. And I think the first domino to fall in that series was in the Agile. I mean, there's other people doing this in the late 90s, but in the Agile manifesto, they're like, okay, we are no longer gonna like wait 6 months till we ship a thing to the to the customer, and then the customer's like, this is nothing like I described, and there's that like, cartoon of like how we so so I think like that, and then moving that forward is like, now we're not really consuming software on like CDs or it's like not installed software. It's like I'm buying services, and so now operations has to be brought into that loop, right? And so that's a long answer.
A big part of what you're saying
sorry
is
about that, but yeah,
a big part of what you're saying has to do with a mindset around if you can massively reduce your risk on an iterative basis, then then your ability to be agile, roll out software fast, for example, and deliver continuously is enhanced, and that makes a lot of sense. I will say though, I am pleasantly surprised that despite that, didn't come with a cavalier attitude. Like as much as we say in DevOps, fail fast, fail often, that kind of nomenclature or whatever. I don't see wholesale failures happening all over the place. Like it seems like we're doing as a community a pretty good job at how we're rolling code out. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Like you don't see too much carnage in the class. Every now and then you get something, but it seems like people are generally being pretty successful at having reduce the risk and iterating quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're still seeing look, software is a human enterprise. Human enterprises are going to have faults, failures. Actually, at Verica, we are one of our projects we work on is called the Void. It's the Verica Open Incident Database. We've taken around 2,000 incidents and cataloged them, and try to look for how complex systems fail and sort of bring some patterns and to light out of that. And we originally started that project because we wanted like product research for like the stuff we build out for Kubernetes and for Kafka. We wanted to know how those things failed. We brought in a great researcher. She kind of built out this database, and they were like, well, this should just go for the world, right? So we've provided out kind of a void. We have a void report that we issue every fall. So the new one's coming up here, I think, in about a month. And and so we do see failures and outages and breaches continue to happen. I wouldn't say they're worse because of DevOps. I would probably say they're the systems did gain some additional resiliency because of how they're using the cloud, how they are being spun up on a regular basis. I think there's an old adage, and I'm horrible at like getting these quotes kind of right, but if you're doing something on a regular basis, you're able to respond a lot faster. So just by the nature of, let's say you deploy your software 10 times a day or 10 times a week even, you're no longer like, your break fix is going to be really easy. Like everybody's already practiced on your team on how to go ahead and and roll that out, right? How to respond to a breach, how to respond to an outage, how to respond to that. I can think back to working in the infrastructure, kind of one of those early jobs I had pre-cloud and stuff. And it was like, you get everything in, you put it in the change control database, you have your change control meeting, everybody sign off, and somehow that's good, right? And then you have like deployment day, and then like that goes through the whole weekend, and now you've worked 36 hours trying to get this thing up. I've done this, and it's like, why are we doing this? And it hit me doing one of these, as a young engineer. It was a Saturday morning, and we needed to roll out like a fix to one of the apps that we had broken that had taken down a whole bunch of stuff. I've slept a lot since then, so some of the details are we'll just kind of leave them out. But I remember thinking, like, why are we able to quickly roll out this change, this emergency patch, and everybody rubber stamped approval all the way down from the C level, and like we are agile, like we are DevOps in that moment, right? But like the weeks and months leading up to this, no, we're not, right? We're very ITIL process, like we got our flows and water charts, and
you were waterfalling all over the place, baby.
Oh yeah, that's right. So anyways, it just seemed very incongruent, right? It's like those are two, and And yet, if we'd been doing the other thing all the time, like we would have been really good at like rolling out these fixes. We would have put out small amount of code over time, and and so
building muscle memory and figuring it all out.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I blame us, computer science, stealing from civil engineering all those years ago, looking for a model. So
paving cow paths, that's what I call it.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is, but that's all right. We're finding our way now, and I love it. Okay,
yeah.
so
well,
I'm gonna pick it.
To be fair, back then hardware was expensive. Hardware was very expensive back then. So maybe the tie to civil engineering made a lot of sense in the 80s.
Sure.
Sorry.
All right, I want to pick at this topic one more from a slightly different angle. Is DevOps and DevNetOps? I hear us talking about DevNetOps with a little more bias towards infrastructure as code than DevOps raw. Is that fair? Like, is there a much stronger infrastructure as code bias when we're talking about DevNetOps or even DevSecOps?
I think that whenever people add the other pieces to DevOps, they do it in so much as they can show their new commitment to the overall piece. So I'm not as in the community on like the DevNetOps piece.
Are you saying we're pretenders? Is that what you're saying? We're pretenders?
No, I'm just saying like I come from more from the DevSecOps world where like people are like security people, because and I think network engineers, I'm sure they'd find themselves in the same situation as security as this. Like for every 10 developers to one operations person, well, you could extrapolate that out. Even it's like for one security person, you have 10 operations people to 100 developers, right? So you have this small siloization inside of your organization. The security people are like, how do I participate in that process? How do I move into where I'm not a blocker, but I'm actually showing value? Where security is taking part in the overall development and operations flow, kind of delivering software and taking part of that. So I'm guessing that DevNetOps would be, very similar in that instance of like, okay, here's how we're gonna, think about our network appliances or other stuff that we're trying to either, automate or put in some sort of codified way, tested way. So I think like we're all trying to, it's not being a pretender. I think it's just like the discipline of DevOps. I was
just making fun of myself.
Oh no. I mean I don't like the word DevSecOps really. Like I think like it's sort of like it's security was never intentionally left out, neither as like networking or anything. But I think just there was too much of the problem domain early on in DevOps to really focus on. Okay, like we got all these servers. How are we going to codify them? Like, what are we going to do? What are the test systems we're going to set up? How are we going to, we have to do observability. We have to look at, figure out what's going on with the system. So, so I think we're just continuing to evolve, forward on a lot of these pieces, and each little step as we add in new people, new tribes into the kind of overall kind of the DevOps, the DevOps tent, there's going to be different ways we're thinking about it, we're describing it, that we're going to be kind of using each other's tooling or language to kind of put all that together, for sure. So I wouldn't feel bad about it. Yeah.
All right. So let's say I want to learn more about I'm either having a career shift or I'm new to IT. New to tech, new to development, and I want to learn more about this. Tell the audience how they can learn more. Why not steer them in direction of your learning site, and maybe give some direction on the best way to approach.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. If you have a LinkedIn Learning subscription, you can. I tell people, I'm like, if you like Braveheart, and like you could have hours and hours of me talking to you, longer than Braveheart, about DevOps, DevSecOps, and about all these topics. But no, there's a lot of good stuff in that in their catalog. They do really high production value type of material over there. if you come in more from a developer side, my buddy Karthik's got a course in there that's really really good as well. Yeah, those are good ways to start. I've had several people let me know that during doing career changes, like kind of watching the DevOps piece, or even someone who's adjacent, like in sales or marketing, be able to watch it and just be able to get the terminology lined up and figure out how to do it. If you're kind of coming at it, but you're already a developer, or you're kind of making a change into like an operations type world, I'd recommend checking out the Phoenix Project, or by Gene Kim. It's a really great piece. He also has the DevOps Handbook. Coming up from security, the security book I really like is the Agile Application Security book. It's an O'Reilly book. I think that one's really good. Just look at my bookshelves over here, so I'm trying to think of other stuff I would recommend to people for trying it out. Those are a few that I always recommend. If you know you're really interested in SRE, there's a good book called Seeking SRE, which has, I mean, there's a lot of SRE books out there, so there's some good options for you. I do like Release It is a Michael Nygaard book that kind of came out of developers doing a lot of this stuff. It also brings in some of the practice like we do over at Verica with like chaos engineering. There's some good pieces in that I think put all that together. So
well, that's perfect. Actually,
those are my book recommendations.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and that's a perfect segue. Little time, at the end of talk about Verica a little bit. I'll say this: like, I meeting you and meeting Tony and meeting Casey, like, there's some really cool, smart people at Verica. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what Verica is all about?
Yeah. Verica. We also we've taken a continuous verification approach to dealing with Kubernetes and Kafka. And we also have a open source project, Prowler, that we sponsor. That is Amazon Web Services security project. So we're really excited about that, and we've been really excited to be partnering with ONUG for our work with Prowler, and for just kind of bringing this sort of stuff to the folks over there. And ONUG, I won't call it ONUG.
Right. Call it ONUG. Yeah. Let's just set that in stone, because why wouldn't we?
What does Nick call
it? Nick says ONUG, and we're talking about Nick Lippis, one of the co-founders. So how odd is it that one of our co-founders calls it wrong? So that's just the way it is. So I love correcting him. Because I like keeping my career like on the edge all the time by correcting my boss. So you're going to be at the ONUG. You'll be at the ONUG conference in fall. Is that right?
In New York. Yep.
Yeah, it's great. I think so. You're organizing a few sessions. I think speaking at a few sessions. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing at ONUG.
Yeah, along this topic, I've been putting together a DevSecOps track over at ONUG. So we have. If you're interested in Kubernetes, or we have a great talk over there on that, some cloud security talks. Let's see. Oh, we're bringing in Pete Cheslock, he's famous for the first DevSecOps meme that ever kind of went viral, at least in our industry. And nice. He's going to be kind of giving one of our keynotes. It's really great. And he's worked at some really interesting security startups along the way, so that'll be cool. So it's going to be a good little track. We should be a lot of discussion, a lot of good time to be able to get some of these high caliber folks and kind of pick their brain if that's something of interest to you.
That's fantastic. So James, honestly, thanks for spending some time. Thanks for letting the audience, the ONUG audience members, get to know you a little bit better. I know they're going to get a lot out of what you're going to be doing at the ONUG Fall Conference. And don't forget, that's October 19th and 20th, Center 415 on 5th Avenue in Manhattan. And yeah, you're going to get to see James and this merry band of DevOps people just school us. It's going to be fantastic. James, thanks again for being with us. I appreciate it. And we'll see. Yeah. And we'll catch everyone else next time on the ONUG podcast. Thanks for joining us.